release the philosophy of treating others the way you want to be treated. We have often been brought up with this concept that if I show up and treat others the way I want to be treated, then it will be good. But the reality is, we are not the same people. And what you perceive the world and how you prioritize the world is not the same. So what we want to do is...
Hello, Nancy. Good morning. Happy holidays.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on your show today. I love this.
I appreciate your time. You know, it's a happy time for you. It's even happier soon you're going to have your anniversary, which is really happy. So yes. I really do appreciate your time. You know, anniversary, relationships, communication, that's something that you're an expert in. Today, we might not talk too much about, partnership, husband and wife communication, whatever type of partnership it is, but more about the workplace communication. Since, if we would have spoke 50 years ago, well, I wouldn't have been here 50 years ago, but if we would have spoke 50 years ago, so communication in the workplace was important, but I'm not sure there was that much of room for that, space for that, and people used to work in the same job for years, for 40, 50 years. Today, people always change jobs, and I also believe that people's voice today have more of a place in the workplace, and you'll talk more about that. But if you could just as a start explain why is it so important to have that good communication at work?
So for me, if I go back years in my career, there have been moments in time where leaders have demotivated me because of how they've communicated with me. So even if I have been doing something wrong, instead of helping me work through it, the communication style has often been a way that demotivates me and causes me to go back. And what I also recognized is that there were times in my leadership role where I would do the same for others. And so I was like, what is it that I'm doing wrong? What is it that's inside of me that's coming out that's causing communication issues? And so I've always been on this search to try and find how can I help motivate others, and not even necessarily motivate, but keep from demotivating others in the workplace so that they can show up as their best self and perform as their best self. So when we embrace communication, it can actually become the competitive edge in our ability to move up the corporate ladder or to promote our corporation both internally and externally.
Wow. And all that's only through, well, I won't say only, but through good communication, you could actually achieve those?
Yeah, through great communication, you can achieve those. If you think about every interaction between two people, it's always communication. And so even the words that happen inside ourselves, in our mindset, are communication to ourselves, right? It's the words, it's the patterns that we say to ourselves, and it's patterns we've been saying since we were a child. So in any connection between two or more people, it's always based on communication.
Wow, that's amazing. And before we dive deep inside the whole communication world, I see that as step two. Step number one, what I want to ask you is, what mindset should someone have when it comes to a communication with his boss, with his colleague at work? What's the mindset that we need to have in order to start that communication? Soon we'll also talk about those tools that I'm sure there'll be, the golden nuggets that you'll give us. But what's that mindset we need to have before we even start the communication?
So one of the mindsets that I feel people should have before they start communication with others is to release the philosophy of treating others the way you want to be treated. We have often been brought up with this concept that if I show up and treat others the way I want to be treated, then it will be good. But the reality is, we are not the same people. And what you perceive the world and how you prioritize the world is not the same. So what we want to do is open up and consider, how does the other person want to be treated? How do they receive information? How do I help them grow in this conversation?
Wow. That's like, over our life, that's like everything starts from there, treat people the way you want to be treated. And what you just now said over here is so important, I believe, because that's so true. Many times in any type of communication, we come from our point of view in order to help or serve someone else, but we're speaking to a different person. And what you just now said is so important and so crucial. I'm so happy about that. I was like, if someone stops watching the video right now, well, I think they should keep on, because what you have to say is amazing. But but putting that in our mind in any conversation, not only at work, also with with our partners, with our kids. That's so important. I can't even put the emphasis on how much important it is. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Wow. Okay.
Well, and if you think about it, right, you and I are in the area of business, and they keep telling us is to speak your customer's language, right? Don't use the words you use. Think about what are the words your customer uses. What is the words? How do they say it? How do they describe the issue, the problem they're having? And communicate to them in that style. It's the same thing, whether it's your boss, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your child, right? Whether it's your parent or coworker, whatever it is, right? What is the language pattern? What is the word? How do they communicate?
Wow, that value is like gold. And I just want to say, I could hear already people talking to themselves, well, I'm not really sure what they want, how they want. So of course, I would be happy if you answer on that. Like if I don't know, like you're saying, well, think to yourself what that person wants. I don't know what they want. Like how do I start? Like how do I understand what they want in order to provide them with what they actually need? And then we both actually grow from whatever interaction.
Yeah. So I'm going to break another myth as we go through this. So
Happy holidays.
Myth, right, is listen twice, speak once, right? We have this concept of it's important to listen more. And so what I want people to do is actually observe more, not just listen. So when we observe, people speak through gestures, posture, facial expression, and then words. So the words are very much the last thing that people use. So what you want to do is really start to pay attention to their body language, to how are they showing up in that moment, and then try your best to approach in similar body language, in similar patterns, and then start to ask questions. And so you can ask a question such as, how do you feel about it? Which will approach about 30% of the population. What do you think about it? Will approach about another 35% of the population, or just tell me more. And I really love tell me more because it really just allows that other person to express what it is that they're thinking. And don't answer. Just like listen truly with words such as tell me more. Share with me. I'd love to know more about that. Right? Just really ask and be open to listen fully.
Wow, that's so important. And I think the beauty of Tell Me More is that you actually realize that the first, issue that because that issue started the conversation or because that question, that's not the main thing. When someone, like when you go into Tell Me More, you actually go deeper inside and you actually kind of touch that real base of that, whatever issue it is you want to talk about. So I appreciate that. And I just want to say that also myself and also whoever's watching, if it doesn't work first time, second time, all good. When we were born, we didn't know how to walk. We tried, we fell. Well, before trying, we started crawling, and then so it's a practice. And if we practice what you just now mentioned, I think that could be so valuable to any type of relationship in life. Coming with that mindset and just going in there, and you find a whole different world. So I appreciate you for bringing that up. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to also try to understand more the value in the day-to-day of the communication. Like when I say the value, I mean, today people work in places that, you don't always have passion for your place. And I think that having good communication, like you mentioned, can really change the way you get to work every day, like from coming to work like another day. So, you know, when you have good communication, you could come with good vibes, and you have good vibes, so, you know, you shine to the people around you at work, at home, friends. So how do you create that good communication that afterwards will also bring, you know, would kind of shine light in you, in your surroundings? I think that alone could be really great value for people, because everybody work.
Yeah, so I have a couple different philosophies on that. One is what I call creative conflict. And so oftentimes we think of conflict as this negative perspective, right? But when we go into it with the idea to dive in to find incredible solutions, when people get to show up and put their ideas on the table in a way that's energizing and fun and inspiring without um, without blame or shame. They can just show up and provide ideas. It energizes people forward, right? Like, what is it within you that shows up with the value, with the desire to be in this workplace? And so I encourage leaders, especially when they start to hire people at the start, is instead of hiring people based on what is their degree, what activities have they done, spend time hiring people based on what is their values, what is the passion that they bring to this workplace, to this company, to the job or role that they're in. And if they've been there a long time, maybe it's shift them to a different role where their passion shows up, where they can desire. So as a leader, it's your responsibility to use what I call creative conflict to figure out what inspires somebody to show up every day so that they have that energy, they have that excitement, they have that motivation to move forward in their day.
Wow, that's so important. And I'm wondering, as you were saying that, so, you know, a few things came up to my head. As leaders, it's nice, but each leader, not each, but most of the leaders or managers also have someone above them. So my question is, maybe me as a leader, you know, for my team, I really know I have this environment that lets people pronounce themselves and like put everything on the table with no judgment, and because that's really crucial. I think also Ray Dalio has his hedge funds, Bridgewaters, and he also speaks about that when things come up, he wants everyone to give their feedback, and he wants everyone to be proactive, because he doesn't judge. Like everything, there'll be a lot more information out there, and they could grow a lot more. But that's beautiful for Bridgewaters. My question is, what happens if my team is like that, but when I go up to the above team, the manager over there doesn't really care, and, you know, I don't really have that space for that nice communication that you said, which is beautiful. But if the boss above me or whatever doesn't really give that, what do you recommend in that situation?
So one of the challenges, especially for people who are in middle management, like I think they have the hardest job, right? Because they're dealing with feedback down and they're dealing with feedback up, and then they've got to go both directions. Like it's very, very challenging. And so for them, it is really about understanding how the different people on your team communicate. And so I use a model known as the process communication model, which was developed with NASA. But what it does is it allows us to identify different people's communication style. So as a middle manager, you have the ability to see how your boss communicates. And so how do you share information up and down that benefits your team? And then how can you work with the different members of your team to be able to communicate down to them ideas and philosophies that are coming from your boss? And so having a way to be able to identify how people perceive the world and how they react in their natural communication style helps you become really better at being able to work these different strategies with these different levels within your organization.
Nice. So you're saying even if someone is not, you know, his mind is not towards the type of communication that you just now said a few minutes ago, you could still find their type of communication and communicate to them in their way. But my question, should I try and maybe should I try and change their way of communication, like towards the way that I think is more valuable, or I should just work with what they have?
So our goal is not to actually change people's communication and change who they are as a person. But in the process communication model, what we recognize is that everybody has every communication style within them at varying degrees. And so what we want to do is be able to connect as a leader. We want to be able to go connect with that person at that style. And one of the ways that people are able to communicate in the other styles is by paying attention to their stress and their anxiety and understanding what leads to them being less stressed. And then we can naturally and authentically adjust communication styles.
I'm not sure I understood that. You're saying at first I need to understand my
Yes.
communication style, my level of stress, whatever, and only then I could go and try to, yeah.
Yeah, so there's two things. One is that as a person, we need to understand what leads to stress within us. As we become stressed, sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. I don't know if you
That's
can
all
hear
good.
them.
It's all good.
Okay.
It's fine.
So each person has a communication style that's natural in our day. As well, we have a style of distress pattern. So for example, my distress pattern, and one of the reasons that I really led to this is that when I'm in stress, I will micromanage. We hear a lot about how micromanaging can lead to toxic workplace. So as a leader, my first thing that I need to do is put activities into my day that support me in around productive work and effort, time and structure, and ensure that I recognize the importance around that work that I'm doing, that I actually get some time to do productive work. If so, I can manage my stress. With other people, their stress pattern could be, another one that we hear often is the please you stress pattern. And so they'll over adapt to others and sometimes make wishy-washy decisions or start to make mistakes. And so if you're one of those leaders, you need to recognize, what is it that I need to do? Which for them, it's having sensory things. So maybe it's having a cup of tea in the morning and making yourself feel relaxed and comfortable. Maybe it's doing things like the other is appreciation of person. So having family pictures in your office, reminding yourself and doing meditation work about how much you appreciate yourself as a person. So as leaders, our first priority is to recognize what our distress pattern is and work through that. Once we do, we're able to adjust our communication naturally because we're not using distressed language in the workplace.
Wow. So you're saying before I go and start working on communication with other people, with workers that work with me, first communication comes working communication with myself.
Exactly, right?
Okay.
As you said earlier, right? Mindset and filling your cup is critical for your 6 areas of life. The same is true in communication.
Wow. Okay. So I have a question. Now, let's say I worked on myself. I understand, what caused me for the stress, and we always work on ourselves. But I'm in a place to start the communication, and I feel that the team that works for me, there's some resistance in the communication, because at the end of the day, we want communication, like you said in the beginning, that would help growth not only for us, for the whole company, for whatever business it is.
Right.
So what do I do when there's resistance in the communication?
So now that you've understood yours, you can show up more authentically. Now the next bit is to identify these same distress patterns in each of your employees, which actually is quite easy. It's surprising.
Easy?
Right? So
sounds hard.
what you're
okay.
I used to think it was more difficult than it is, right?
Wow.
But you start to notice what is each person's distress pattern. So are they blaming people? Are they manipulating people? Are they over controlling or micromanaging? Are they in this wishy-washy decisions or making mistakes in that please you? Are they retreating and they need solitude, right? Like you speak to them and you get no response, just like a deadpan face, and they take a long time to respond? Or are they somebody who's crusading, pushing beliefs and values? With each of these personality types, we know what they need psychologically to fill their cup. So as a leader, you can offer that to them during the day. So for example, if somebody is withdrawing, one of the things that I often do with those type of people is, if we're going to go into a team building, I provide them the questions or issues about 24 to 48 hours in advance, ask them to consider it while they've got time to process it. And then when they show up, they're able to actually show up not stressed and worried that they're trying to overthink the answer. So if you can start to identify in each team member what their psychological need is, you can appreciate what they need. And when you show appreciation for each of the person individually, then you can bring them out of resistance and into that state where you can actually get the best out of them.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. It sounds really simple, but I'm not sure it is. I'm sure it's valuable, like crazy. And for me to make it more simple, I'm not sure if I can do that or not, because I believe in making things simple. So you're saying to identify that psychological need, and then you basically take down that resistance and create more connection. The goal is not only taking down the resistance, it's actually creating that connection. So my question is, instead of me trying to figure it out, can I just go and ask them? Or you're saying that's something I should do from the outside and leave them out of it?
Right. So there's a couple ways to do it. One is to observe them. How do they show appreciation to others? And through that observation, you can answer that question. So what is it that they do that shows up in how they show others what they need, right? Because we go back to that concept, treat others the way we want to be treated.
Yeah.
So when we do, right, if we keep going back to that concept of others are going to show up asking to be treated the way they want to be treated. So when you show up that way and pay attention and observe how others treat others, then you'll start to know how they want to be treated in the process. You can also ask them, what is it that makes you feel good? But if they have resistance to you, they may not answer that question.
Right.
Right? So being observing of them really helps in this situation.
Of their communication with other people.
How do they communicate with other people? That is ideally how they want to be communicated with.
Right. It seems like work, and actually I like the word work. I don't think work is a bad word. Actually, I think it's a good word, because anything worthwhile, if you want to appreciate it, you need to put work into it. So I think that's beautiful, and that's really worthwhile doing. I want to go now to the more, like, let's say, to the employee side, or if you, I believe each person is a leader first. You're a leader for yourself, because the way you act in the world will influence whoever's around you.
Right.
But if right now, let's say you're an employee and you want to, I'll divide into two. Number one, if you want to find a new job, how should you communicate when you come to that interview? I know it's a big question, so I'm just trying to get the core. if it's an option, if not, maybe we'll talk about that different time. And number two, with inflation going up and prices going up, so if someone needs some more cash, some more money, and or they want to ask for a raise, what's the core, like, of the idea of how to communicate that?
So two things. So the first is, if you are looking for a new job and a new opportunity, you want to figure out what is the value that you can bring to the company. And I'm going to flip that into also in the concept of getting a raise. So when I think of people getting a raise, right, what we should be talking about is our future value that we will bring. and not what it is that we have done in the past. And the reason being, right, is even as people who coach, who work in that, right, we talk about what is it that people are going to gain by me stepping into that new role and asked to be paid accordingly to that. And so oftentimes the biggest mistake that I see people make when looking for a new job or looking for a raise is getting clear on what is the value that I can bring. So if I can show up to a company, and I worked in the oil and gas and doing project management for 25 years, if I can say, I'm going to allow me to lead this team and I'm going to save you, like in some of my jobs, I saved companies millions of dollars. My raise I want is based on what I can bring.
Nice.
Instead of what I've done in the past, because you've already done that. That's not gaining me anything new. But if you can predict and be like, okay, I've learned these skills and now I can create this benefit in our corporation that will increase revenue, that will reduce downtime, whatever it is, pay attention to what is it that you can bring and give, and then figure out what that value is and how much they can compensate you for that value.
Nice. I like that. So the focus is basically what value you can add. And I think what's nice about that, and I really like that point, that also if, you know, whether you get that raise or not, and I believe, you know, if someone will be good enough, they will get that raise. And if, you know, these days a lot of people are looking for jobs. So if they'll be consistent with what they're looking, they'll find. But what's really nice about it, even if this raise they won't get in that job, they won't get, they're getting over here opportunity to do introspection and find those answers, because sometimes we don't know those answers. We could work in a place for years and not really think about those stuff. So, you know, the idea you just gave here, and I think that's a great practice to do every, you know, it's not once in a lifetime, it's always to do it and remember, can help us also, you know, kind of shine light on other areas of our life that we can see, oh wow, we can actually provide some value here. So
yeah. Well, and just to add to that, right, if the person doesn't negotiate the actual dollars and say, okay, I'm going to start paying you a 5% salary increase, right, as you hit milestones, negotiate like a business, right? If I start to show in 6 months a 10% revenue, then I get a bonus for achieving that milestone. Right. So you can also do it milestone based on actual KPIs and evidence that have transformed in the organization.
Beautiful. And that way it's a win-win situation. I think also for yourself,
exactly,
not only in the money place, like, because it also increases your self-confidence when you, okay, you got to that milestone, you got that raise, beautiful. But then you see, wow, if I got there, I could also get there and there and there. So
exactly, right.
Yeah.
And think of how much a company would want you to be somebody who helps them sell more widgets, right? Like maybe you're a salesperson, maybe you work in a restaurant and you are good at upselling desserts with their main course, right? It doesn't matter what you do, right? This starts to increase the value that you bring as an employee into your team and organization.
Beautiful. I really love that. Wow, you gave me here so many great tools. And
thank you.
I think all of them are amazing. What you said at the beginning of, you know, not looking through our eyes and actually looking through what someone else needs. I can't even put the, you know, the emphasis how important it is for any relationship. So I really appreciate everything, but that one was like, wow. And I'm sure there's, you know, much more great value that you could provide us. But it's holiday time. By the way, you know how I realize you're Canadian from your accent? I love that accent of the Canadians. There's a Canadian actor, I forgot her name, How I Met Your Mother. Her name is Robin. And that word about, you say it in a really cool way.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways, I really appreciate your time. And I think the most important thing to take from here is the practice of all the tools you said, because it's right. It's not that one time we'll do it. Okay, wow, we're really good at it, right? Assuming there's practice to put into it.
Yeah.
And if we practice those tools that you provided us with, it could really be a game changer in any type of communication, but of course also in your workplace, also with, you know, employees that
Exactly.
work around us, understanding their psychology need, that's so valuable. And then you wake up in the morning like, oh, cool, another day of work. Like, nice,
Yeah,
I like it. And that has a
exactly.
whole, like, when you come from that place or your day, so your whole day looks different. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much, Nancy,
Yeah.
for all those tools. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And just as an offer to anybody who's watching, if they go to my website, nancymichellecoaching.com, I gladly do a free communication strategy call with somebody. So if you've got a difficult boss or a challenging employee or coworker, or you and in a personal relationship are struggling, book a call with me and I will gladly walk you through how to identify that person's psychological needs and how to adjust your communication to support them in it. It's 100% free. And they're very welcome.
That was my next question. Where can people find you? So you got there before me, and I really recommend people to contact you because you're a professional, whatever has to do with communication, also other things, but right now we're talking about that. So really, you mentioned the place to go. I'll also leave a link in the notes below to get there.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Okay.
very much. This has been so much fun. I enjoy this, and I'm glad we've met through Movement Makers.
That was amazing, and I hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yes. Yes. Cheers.
Okay, happy holidays. I hope you enjoyed the video and you got some tools to overcome your challenges and light your path. For us to help other people, please press that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget that the most amazing things in life are the one you take for granted.